Hello, I'm Richard. Welcome to this, the fifth of our Lent talks for this year. In past talks we have been thinking about prayer as communication with God, about how God speaks to us, not just in words but often without words, and how we can hear God, how we hear God in our lives, and how we hear God in the silences. We've thought about how it's been said that silence is God's first language, and it is in being comfortable with that language that we can hear God. Also, the difficulties that there are, the noise, the busyness of our own world, the speed at which we live, and the thoughts and the busyness and the noise in our own heads, and how we get around that conversation to hear God speaking. It is hard enough to hear God when there's just him or her and us. We then only have our own imperfections to contend with. But few of us can live in solitude. Few of us feel called to live in a monastery or have the chance to live on an island somewhere with just ourselves. Many more of us, in fact all of us perhaps, have to live in the world and with other people. The world that is imperfect and, dare I say it, with people who are also imperfect. In truth, God can speak through the imperfections of the world and the imperfections of the people we share this world with. In fact, it is, I think, ourselves we see reflected in the world and in those people around us. Jesus makes this point with some humour in Matthew's Gospel.
Do not judge, or you too will be judged. For in the same way you judge others, you will be judged, and with the measure you use, it will be measured to you. Why do you look at the speck of sawdust in your brother's eye, and pay no attention to the plank in your own eye? How can you say to your brother, "Let me take the speck out of your eye," when all the time there is a plank in your own eye? You hypocrite! First take the plank out of your own eye, and then you will see clearly to remove the speck from your brother's eye.
We can so much more easily see the imperfections of others than of ourselves. And Jesus tells this ridiculous story about the sawdust in our neighbour's eye and the plank of wood in our own, to make people stop, to pause and think and reflect about themselves and how they are with the world and with other people. In recent years, our society has been focused on calling out wrongs, and rightly so. For too long, wrongs have been accepted and tolerated, blind eyes have been turned, and that has led to a great deal of hurt. Institutions in particular, perhaps, have much to account for. But today I want to think much more about the small, everyday encounters, the annoyances, the people at work, the people in the checkout queue, around the breakfast table. Those people might well be in the wrong, and telling them so probably won't make things any better. Few people become better people for having their faults pointed out to them, however good that might feel. But the reflection on our responses can teach us a great deal about ourselves. Do we feel superior? Does it build on our prejudices? Does it show us what we already knew about them? Do we not want people to change? That is all too human, all too much a part of who we are. The discomfort we feel as we look at ourselves can be God's word to us. It is not often comfortable or easy to hear, and we can easily distract the blame by looking at others and seeing the fault, seeing the sawdust in their eyes. Some years ago, when I was working as a prison chaplain, I had a difficult relationship with a governor. And when restructuring of the organisation came along, I had to reapply for a post I'd held for many years. I wasn't given the job and a junior chaplain took over. It was a hard time, a very difficult and painful time. The hardest part of the experience was not so much losing the responsibility and losing the position. In some ways I quite enjoyed not having so much to carry, fewer meetings to go to. What I found much harder was my own response, what I saw of myself. What had I become that all this was inside of me? Was I so arrogant? Was I so full of self-importance? So lacking in humility? Well, seemingly I was. Paul, in his letter to the Galatians, tells his readers that they should work towards the fruits of the Spirit of love, joy, peace, forbearance, kindness, goodness, gentleness, and self-control. These matter just as much as justice. These are where God is leading us. And the imperfections of this world can be the grit that gives us the discomfort to stop and think again. Paul gave thanks to God for the troubles in his life. I don't think I shall ever reach that point, and perhaps not many of us will. But I leave you with another story from my time in prisons. When I worked in a prison for teenage boys, there was a gardener who would work with some of the lads to cut the grass, tend the gardens, weed the flower beds. Few of those lads had any experience of growing and planting and gardening. Almost all of them came from urban backgrounds, and the idea of crawling around in the gardens was quite alien to them. I remember the gardener telling me one day that he felt that he'd made real progress with the lads when they stopped calling the stuff dirt and rather called it soil. Dirt was messy stuff, to be avoided, to be washed away. Soil is where life grows, where life is nurtured. It is perhaps a matter of perspective. The imperfections of this world need not be dirt, but can instead be the soil where life is nurtured.